To let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded. We invite everyone to introduce, especially if you are attending the ATJ Board meeting for the first time, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You are not mandated, but we strongly encourage you to share your preferred pronouns in the introduction. I also want everyone to know that the ABA Standing Committee on Legal Aid and Indigent Defense has posted the latest draft of the proposed revisions to the ABA standard. And I want to encourage each and everyone to seeks to make a revision to that standard to please provide your revision. The deadline, which is not in the email sent by Shubi, is on the 28th of May 28th. Please try to provide your input before then. I believe the board is also going to be working on some revision. I also want to remind everyone that we are soliciting folks in civil legal aid to serve on the Council on Public Defense. I believe Bonnie sent a notice on that to the Alliance listserv. We will really appreciate if someone will step up and represent civil legal aid community at the Council for Public Defense. I also want to remind people that we are recruiting for a new board member, but we are prioritizing folks from community-led organization and those with lived experience. We want to remind people that we have extended the deadline for the submission also, and so as to ensure that we have opportunity for community-led organization. The current applications require that you put in your board, your bar numbers and all of that. We want to be able to do away with that and give more opportunity to folks from community-led organizations to be able to apply. I also want to remind folks that we are collecting awards nomination for the ATJ Board Awards. This is not the WSBA award, but the ATJ Board Awards. We extended the deadline for submission to the end of this month. So we want to encourage everyone to apply. That's so much all the introductions and notes that I have to share with everyone. We go to March minutes. We have provided a minute ahead of time in your agenda as an attachment to your agenda. Any motion?
So moved.
Sal move. Second?
Second.
SP and Judge Bradley seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Unanimously approved. Now we go to Michael, Pro Bono Council letter regarding event in Clark County. Is Michael on the line? Yes, he is. Go ahead, take it away, Michael.
Yes, thank you everyone for some of your time on the agenda this morning. I did, I assume you have the letter. I think it was in the materials. And so I just want to start by saying that we, or the Pro Bono Council, do appreciate the ATJ Board's action last meeting with the letter to the Commission on Judicial Conduct. We appreciate that there was some timeliness required and importance in getting that letter out quickly. So I would like to start by thanking the ATJ Board for doing that. For this letter today, I think it speaks for itself, so I'm not going to read it word for word, but I do have a couple brief points. First is that I think the ATJ Board's discussion last meeting to hopefully take some further action was appreciated by the Pro Bono Council. So I hope that the ATJ Board today will see this letter as a call to continue and take some action and make good on that sentiment. Second, we understand that the Commission on Judicial Conduct has an investigation. It will do that investigation. We're not asking the ATJ Board to try and affect that investigation or change it or anything like that. I think today what we're hoping for is something more of a public statement or commitment to draft a letter something that shows an unambiguous position condemning racism on the bench, and hopefully specifically the actions by this specific judge. And finally, I would like to highlight that I think this is a really good opportunity for the ATJ board to make a show of solidarity with a lot of the boots on the ground legal aid providers. I know many of you work for legal aid organizations, but as an organization, the ATJ board really is a little bit removed from the legal aid providers and the clients they serve. And I'm sure many of you follow the news. And so I think that today or this week is a good opportunity to make a stand or take a formal position about accountability in the justice system. So I hope the board today will kind of consider our letter with that in mind. And I think I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's all I had kind of prepared as far as remarks this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. I believe we got this letter this week, and the ATJ board will be making their response to the letter in our next meeting. Our decision framework speaks to how we approach this, and we're going to give a response to the letter after a full discussion of the board. So definitely Pro Bono Council and all the civil legal aid organizations involved we would respond, we'll be hearing from the board about this letter. Thank you. Any other board member that wanted to add to that? All right, thank you. So we move on to ATJ Conference updates. Vanessa and Junior.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. So Junior and I are going to do a 10-minute short update on the AGJ Conference, which will be happening virtually August 11th through the 13th. We have made a ton of progress on the planning committee over the past month and a half and have a lot of exciting news. So I'm going to talk about the schedule and content of the conference, and then turn it over to Junior to talk about registrations and outreach work. So we came into this conference, the entire planning committee, with a strong goal to make this conference responsive to the moment we are in, to recognize that we are still in a moment of crisis in our communities, and that moment has disproportionately impacted communities of color and low-income communities. And we wanted to make sure that this conference built upon past ATJ conferences in centering community voices, in making sure that we were hearing directly from folks who are impacted by the justice system, and really paying special attention to racial justice and other forms of systemic oppression. And I'm happy to report that we have actually, I think, met those goals in the development of the content. So we have a conference schedule that's about, I'd say, 78% of the way there. And a few highlights: we're going to be having tracks on youth issues, housing and homelessness, criminal justice and reentry, technology, gender justice, and racial justice. 15 of our sessions are led by community-based organizations and folks who are directly impacted by the justice system. That's nearly half of the sessions in the conference overall. And it includes, we received and accepted proposals from incredibly exciting folks, including the NAACP Youth Council, which will be presenting on racism in schools, the Black Prisoners Caucus, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network, and which will be presenting on mutual aid in immigrant communities, and a number of other folks. So we're really excited about all of the community-centered proposals that are going to be reflected in this conference, and also the overall theme. Junior, do you want to share a little bit more about fundraising, outreach, and registration?
Absolutely. Thank you, Vanessa. And again, thank you all for having me, allowing me to present from the road here. We have accomplished some pretty unique goals this conference planning committee. One of the biggest is obviously the community-centered directly impacted individuals having a preference. We also, in response to the moment, have worked really hard on trying to make the conference as accessible as possible with all of the different challenges involved. Obviously, many individuals are facing financial crisis and also health crisis, and just trying to meet everybody where they need the support. In work with Sal, Ken Masters, Janae Ball, Jamie Hawk, we were able to already obtain sponsorships that will allow for the first time ever, I believe, to have anyone who would like to attend the conference who is not an attorney seeking CLE credit will be able to attend the conference for free. We are very proud of that. And it's just a monumental moment. Give a lot of credit to Sal, Ken, and a few others who work closely to obtain the sponsorships that are going to make this really, really unique opportunity possible. And Diana as well. I know Diana worked on that as well. So from an outreach perspective, we are working extremely hard to make this as accessible as possible. And I think we're there. One of the next things that we have on our agenda is to bridge the digital divide, the technology. We still will likely have some individuals who need support on the technology end. And I know that from an outreach committee, we're dedicated and focused that when we get those requests, that we are responsive to those accommodations and are working on a system that we can follow in all the different regions in the state to allow for that accessibility to access the conference. So from that note, I'll open it up. And Sal, if you have anything to add on that note, or Diana on the sponsorship that we've obtained, feel free. Thank you.
I'll just add this is really exciting. Yeah, I just love what we're doing this year. You know, I think we started it really an emphasis last conference, but this is like taking it up 3 degrees or triple degrees, whatever. It's going to be a great conference, and just make sure everybody should be getting the word out.
We're going to be opening for registrations, I think it's right at the end of this month, and obviously we'll be sharing information about registrations with folks. We have our outreach and accessibility subcommittee, which is working really hard to try to push out information about the conference, especially to community-based organizations and activists who we are hoping can attend now without the barrier of a registration cost, but obviously welcome as much support as we can in getting the word out about, a really very, very, very exciting program.
Oh, I do want to add to Vanessa's comment in the chat that we have secured enough funding to pay impacted speakers. That was also a priority of ours. Obviously, we've had success in our fundraising, but we wanted to make sure that those funds were used as a resource towards paying speakers as much as we could. So that's where that money is being directed. And again, a very large emphasis and prioritizing our community and community partners, especially individuals who've been impacted by the justice system.
All right, Vanessa and Junior, any other comments? Yes, SP.
I just want to say good job. This is a Herculean effort. It's huge to put on this conference, and the work that has been done by the people that came before you, you know, Sal and other conference organizers, to lay the foundation so that we can be where we're at today. This is the long game, right? And so it's exciting to see what it's going to look like next year. And that, I mean, this is fantastic. And it's going to be even better next year because you're laying the foundation to kind of shoot us into the stars, hopefully. So thank you, both of you, and the team that's with you, because we know it's not just 2 people. We know there's a lot of folks that are involved. So thank you.
Thank you, SP. I tell you, it's been a joy. It has been a joy working with Vanessa and Junior. They are great co-chairs, and they work as a team, and they work with the rest of the planning committee. I'm so proud of the work that they are doing and the work that the planning committee has been doing. However, let me say this, and this is for the rest of us. If you are a system person that applied to present at the conference, there is every likelihood you are going to be disappointed because of the focus on the community-oriented conference that they are putting together. So when you get the inevitable call saying that your wonderful presentation is not accepted, please don't take it personal. Don't write nasty email to Junior and Vanessa. It's because of the way this current conference is being focused. So please, we crave your kind understanding for this, and you are going to be proud of the work that has been done at the end of the day. So it's time for us as system providers to sit back and listen to people outside, to the people that we provide the services to reflect back to us on how we are doing the work. This is the best time to do that. And I believe that the conference will enable us to, for the first time, stop talking and start listening. It's really going to be a great time. Thank you, Vanessa and Junior. You know how much I love you guys. Thank you so much. Now, we go to Michael for the Delivery System Committee Strategic Planning Proposal.
Sure. Let's see. So there is a memo kind of about this in the materials for this meeting. But I can summarize very briefly that I'm on a subcommittee of DISCO. There are some other members here who are working on kind of strategic planning. We're looking at things like the mission statement, and kind of during the process of looking at where we are and hopefully where we want to go, it became apparent that a lot of the sources that we kind of draw from to, target our work or set goals are pretty old and may not take into account a lot of the more recent developments and race equity and updated understandings of the same. So we brought to DISCO a proposal to kind of reevaluate and potentially update the hallmarks specifically, as they haven't been touched since 2014. And if I remember correctly, they may not have been updated so much as just reapproved in 2014. So what we're asking for today is authorization for DISCO to create and bring a proposal that would cover a project that would reevaluate and potentially update those hallmarks. And along with, that project, we're hoping to request some funding for that. And as far as scoping for that project, Just Lead has already agreed to assist with that. I think our initial hope was that Just Lead could take on that project, but that's a rather large project, and they would probably need to expand even in order to handle that. So I think for now, our kind of idea or proposal would be that this would be an outside project, perhaps with a consultant. And I know some other members of the subcommittee in DISCO are here, so please feel free to add if I've missed something.
Other members? Okay, Murph is signifying no. Okay, this is an action item. Even though we have kind of discussed this in the working session, we have to do it in the spirit of transparency in the public session. So it's an action item. In the absence of any other discussion, can I have a motion by a board member? We got to vote. It's an action item from the committee, so it doesn't need a motion. So all in favor, can I, discussion, Saad, discussion.
So, Michael, if I understand, because when I saw the proposal, there wasn't anything about money before. So my understanding of the proposal, make sure the board's on view, is that DISCO will really come up with a proposal on how to do this, present it to the board, which will have likely a funding component within that request. So all we're voting on today is really, yes, we are voting to ask Disco to give us a proposal. Just so
Yes, I
I
believe, yeah, that is correct. Yeah, the funding request will be included in that proposal.
okay, thank you.
All right, all in favor? Can you indicate? Okay, yes. All right, let me make sure I get everyone. Yes, unanimously approved. Janice, did you get that? Thank you. All right, wonderful. Next, we move to legislative update. This is going to be different this month because we are getting to the end of the legislative session. What we are asking people to present to us is lessons learned. What are the lessons from this year that we need to learn so that we can come back? Like I said, sometimes we don't get all that we ask for. We have to go back, reload, and then plan for the next time. So we're going to start with Antonio. Thank you, Antonio. Antonio has been doing a stellar job for us all through this legislative year. We owe you big.
Oh, Francis, thank you. Okay, so I have a couple of minutes to talk about lessons learned. Hi, everybody. For the folks who I haven't met yet, Antonio Ginata, Policy Director at Columbia Legal Services. I wanted to talk about two quick things. Generally, one lesson which I continually learn in the legislative arena and learned again this year is the legislature never fails to surprise. Usually, legislative advocacy is just naturally disappointing. It's about incrementalism. It's about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. It's about taking a super fantastic idea and just whittling it down into, barely okay ones, but still good ones. So that that's typically the way I'm expecting things to go legislatively. But in this particular time of crisis, I think we have seen the legislature take on and do historic things, particularly in anti-poverty initiatives. And I wanted just to draw your attention to a couple of them. First of all, we all know about the regressive tax structure in the state. And so moving forward on actually funding the working families tax credit on the one side of the equation, and then addressing capital gains on the other, those are big moves to really dive into challenging the regressive nature of our tax system. And I think they're incredibly important. The working families tax credit was originally passed in 2008, and it's been 13 years without being funded. And it happened now. In a time of crisis, they came, funding that is a big step forward. The Fair Start for Kids Act, the incredible investment in childcare and early learning, that's passed. The $300 million for the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund, even things like, and the budget comes out tomorrow, so you can always still be disappointed, but I think you may have seen in the Seattle Times to talk about the diaper stipend, $80 a month for families on TANF with young children to pay for diapers, which can be an incredible expense. These are all really strong anti-poverty initiatives. And in a time when the legislature, I think, was significantly constrained by just the logistical challenges of having a virtual session, has really moved forward on significant systemic anti-poverty initiatives, and it's all really promising. The other lesson I wanted to talk about real briefly was, getting good policy, I think it's obvious to say, it can take time. It's just, you just never really know how much time it's going to take when you start. So the examples that I want to talk about are two bills, one bill that passed in 1 year and one bill that passed in 10 years. We've talked about House Bill 1072 before. That's the bill that removes the immigrant restriction in the Oakland statute. And that bill passed in 1 year. Boom, it's quick. So if you look at that example, you say, oh boy, legislative advocacy, easy. We can get these great things done so quickly. But I think it misses the point of how much work has been done before this year to get to the point that HB 1072 could pass so quickly. I think 1072 is really based on the good relationships and trust that Jim has built with legislators, talking to them about the value of civil and the importance of civil legal aid. It's based on the passage of SB 5165 last year, which was Senator Saldana's bill that banned discrimination on the basis of citizenship or immigration status. It's based on the growth of the continued growth of the immigrant rights movement in Washington, particularly the growth of groups like the WISN, the Immigrant Solidarity Network. And 1072 is like is the final product of all that prep work over time. Even though it just seems like it just took 1 year, I think it took a lot more. You just know, the opportunity presented itself. The bill that took 10 years to pass is Senate Bill 5355, which is the wage lien bill. In terms of context, real quickly, before Washington was even a state, we had a mechanics lien as a remedy. That's the construction lien. So workers on construction projects, if they're not getting paid their wages, they can put a lien on a property and make sure that assets are protected and get paid. So we've been trying to extend that lien remedy to other workers, to janitors, to landscapers, to restaurant workers. This is the creation of a general wage lien, which really, as far as we know, only exists in 2 other states, in Wisconsin and Maryland. This is a bill that Sarah Lehrer, who died last year, helped to write 10 years ago. It has been a challenging bill. We had years we couldn't get a hearing, we couldn't get it out of committee. When we got it out of committee, it stalled in fiscal. I don't think it's ever passed out of the chamber of origin. Business lobby worked hard against that bill. Every year, a new hurdle, new people popping up in surprising ways, but we just kept pushing. And Andrea Schmidt, our lead advocate on the bill, I mean, she's become, I think, in just her work over these last 10 years, a national expert on the idea of a policy of a general wage lien. We conferred earlier this year and thought, boy, this isn't the year for it. It's not clearly within the priorities of the legislature. We'll run it, but we don't even think we're going to get a hearing. That's fine. We'll just set it up as a placeholder. Then we actually had a House hearing, and it was a disaster. It was the worst kind of hearing you would want. It immediately died in the House. We were absolutely sure it was dead. But we just kept trudging along and catching some breaks along the way that were incredibly fortunate. We made some key concessions at the right time, enough to get the support we needed to get 25 votes in the Senate. And before you know it, the governor signs this bill into law last week. 10 years of work, becoming one of the first states to have this type of general wage lien. We just can't control where the finish line is in this work. We just never know exactly where it is, but we can control if we're taking steps towards it. So when a bill dies early in the process, if it dies before its first hearing, and that happened to us this year on another bill, it's still a step forward. So the lesson is keep taking those steps forward. You don't know where the finish line is, but you know you can get closer every year. So those are my lessons learned.
Thank you. Janet and Jim need to leave. So Janet, can you go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Janet Varon. I'm the Executive Director of Northwest Health Law Advocates, and very happy to be here. Wow. I don't think I can add much to what Antonio said. He's right on with his assessment of the work, the struggle, and the surprises. And we are seeing that in the health arena too. You know, I think that maybe the one thing I'll add is that the unfortunate nature of the pandemic has really, I think, moved a lot of people who haven't been moved in the past. And so in the area of health, we've also seen some beginnings and some significant steps toward expansion and of access and somewhat of coverage of healthcare for low-income people. So I'll just run through a few of those things and give you a flavor for what's going on. It's really quite amazing. And again, we're waiting for the budget too, but there are things in the House and the Senate budgets peppered throughout that address health in various ways, and also recognize the connection between health care and health status and social determinants of health. So the first thing that I'll mention is the postpartum bill. This is a bill to extend Medicaid from coverage for pregnant women, which is only going through 2 months postpartum, so that now it will go 12 months postpartum for people who are not otherwise eligible for Medicaid, but recognizing the importance of postnatal and postpartum care for parents, new parents. And that bill actually did pass last year, but was vetoed by the governor because of the budget situation. It's passed again this year, and this time it was signed. So partly because I think the Congress included in its ARPA act recently federal matching funds for this. So we're very excited about that. And there's such a there's such an obvious disparity there. You can see it in the maternal mortality rates based on race, huge discrepancies for Black women especially. Then there is an immigrant health equity coalition that has been working on coverage for immigrants who've been left out of the Affordable Care Act and, of course, Medicaid in general. And there was actually an early action budget that included some funding for health centers, clinics, to provide additional care for these folks, free clinics included, which are probably the primary care providers for undocumented folks. This budget looks like it may include more funding, again, for providers, though it's not creating any entitlement yet, but we are getting recognition that care is needed for these populations especially. And so, what we're trying to do here is to see community involvement and determinations of where this money is spent. So using the health boards, for example, the ethnic and race-based health boards that have emerged to help the agencies decide where this money should go. But this is really the stopgap in a way, because the Immigrant Health Equity Coalition is seeking longer-term systemic solutions to provide equity and coverage and parity and coverage for everybody. One of the bills that passed has to do with the health benefits exchange. It's 5377, and that bill includes premium subsidies to make health insurance more affordable. Now, the exchange is not available to undocumented folks, but there is a potential, we'll look at the budget soon, but there is a potential avenue for some of this subsidy funding for premiums to also be used to create a different program in a few years. So this might be an example more of one of the things that Antonio was talking about. It's the, year by year, you're trying to make progress over time and hopefully get to the place where we actually have equity and have parity. Other things that have happened have to do shorter term, but they have to do with shoring up healthcare resources. A lot of provider payment raises in this budget for Medicaid providers, dentists, physicians, home care workers, a whole group of providers who have all been complaining about the low rates they're paid. And what will be interesting is to see whether this translates into better access. That the providers claim it will. And finally, there's a massive infusion for behavioral health and long-term care services that are sorely needed during this time. All of this, though, in the framework of this biennial budget. So what we want to see is a sustained commitment rather than just a, one and done pandemic kind of solution. So that's where we are. Happy to answer any questions. Oh, and the one other thing I wanted to mention, which does relate to equity, is that the COFA population, the Marshallese, Micronesians, and I always forget the third group, but the Pacific Islanders who have always been disfavored under federal programs, the Congress passed an extension of Medicaid to that group that had been left out. So we have been covering them through our health benefit exchange and our little state wraparound program, but now they'll be able to get, as of July, free coverage. So I think the momentum at the federal level and the funding that's flowing down is really helping the state to make some of these changes that they had not been able to make before. And we just need to work to sustain them and not see cutbacks in future years.
Thank you, Janet. Because Jim also has to go, then we would take comments after everyone has had an input. Jim, over to you, Jim.
Thank you. You know, there's been so much said about lessons learned that there's very little for me to add other than if you hang around long enough, things finally go your way. Things finally go your way because we're in unprecedented times with unprecedented understanding of the depth of the impact of the pandemic and the resulting health, social, economic, and other consequences on formerly invisible communities, disproportionately by every measure experienced by BIPOC communities and other communities that have historically been outside of the care and concern of the legislature. So crisis presents opportunities, but you have to be well positioned to take advantage of those opportunities. I appreciated Antonio's discussion of the 1072 bill and his juxtaposition of that bill with the lien bill, which took 10 years and 1072 ostensibly took 1 year. But my theory on 1072, I think, is very consistent with Antonio's theory, which is 1072 took at least 10 years, probably 25 years. Actually, in this case, 29 years from the date that that provision was put into the statute in the first instance. It's all about having your ducks in line and waiting for that opportunity and being prepared. And we hit on all three, and we were very successful. We knew we were going to get partisan opposition, but even that opposition was tepid at best. They knew it was going to pass. They weren't going to make it a big deal. And I think at the end of the day, it will quietly go into the annals of history and will not disrupt the quality of our relationship with the legislature that we've cultivated over many, many, many years. Other than that, I do think that this is a critically compassionate legislature. They care about people who have been left out. They have learned the lessons of 2008, 2009, 2010, and they are committed to not repeating them again. I fully anticipate that the budgets that come out tomorrow are going to, well, the budget that comes out tomorrow, the conference budget, will reflect that culture, that commitment, despite everything that was thrown at them this year. We came out well. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful and a bit frightened by the responsibility to stand up 2 new right to counsel programs, one on incredibly short notice, but justice is being done, justice is being served, and equity is really a North Star for this legislature, and they are walking their equity talk.
Thank you, Jim. And Chris Polos is the director of the Statewide Reentry Council, and he's going to present to us on the reentry perspective in this legislative year's lessons learned. Chris.
Thank you, Francis. I think everything's already been covered. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you everyone for inviting me today. So as Francis said, I'm Executive Director of the Governor's Statewide Reentry Council, which Francis has been a member of since the beginning. Also an alternate on the Criminal Sentencing Task Force and a member of the Social Equity and Cannabis Task Force, a kind of latest project that I've been involved in. As far as lessons learned, starting there, and then I think I'll mention a couple bills specifically to, planning way ahead with legislators and community members and educating and building support is probably the top lesson that I've learned, not just from this session, but over the last, I think now 3.5 or almost 4 years since I've been in my current position and working through multiple sessions. And another thing is, when possible, bipartisanship is always helpful to get things across the finish line. Well, I mean, that sounds obvious, but I think it's worth saying out loud anyway. And the flip side to that is, even if something is not bipartisan, to not be scared off of going for it anyway, if it's the right and just thing to do. So we saw kind of both of those happening this year with different bills. One bill that I'll highlight for lessons learned is the voting rights bill, which was sponsored by Representative Tara Simmons and Senator Patty Kuderer, initially from Senator Kuderer in the Senate. And what was different this year, I think, was even more of a community coalition built around the bill. So having, even during the interim, we were meeting at least monthly, sometimes weekly, on these open planning session calls with a really interesting and diverse group of stakeholders on those calls all the time, and meeting with legislators, addressing the concerns and fears that legislators had, and then finally having one Republican, conservative, kind of libertarian co-sponsor of the bill, combining all of that with the moment we're in. I mean, I think that, it's already been emphasized that we are in this historic moment and we need to seize upon it. I've found that our legislators, the public, and just our country, the world, has a short attention span. Sometimes I've been in this space for, I started this work while I was still in federal prison myself. And these, attention goes to different matters and then it fades. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. So right now we really have this moment and the legislature and advocates have seized it. I will mention a couple disappointments where I think there still needs to be more education for lawmakers. One is the effort to expand the clemency process. And the other is the good time bill. That was a big letdown. We've had a bunch of big wins this session, but it was really interesting to me that agency request legislation from the Department of Corrections was more progressive than where many of our lawmakers, including Democrats, are currently at. And just to be blunt, I think there were, concerns about the pendulum swinging in the other direction if one party went too far towards changing things. And long story short, that it was not, the majority was not willing to move forward with a bill that would have been the most substantial reduction in mass incarceration in our state that I'm aware of. And that would have increased dramatically the good time allotment and saved just hundreds of millions, if not billions, in the long term on incarceration. So that's something we're certainly going to go back to next year and keep pushing for. But I think it's worth acknowledging that that was one that on kind of short notice wasn't able to make it across the line with either party, really. Of course, the voting rights bill did pass. A bill to increase access to higher education in the prisons passed. And one other bill, I'll probably mention a couple others, but one other specifically that I want to mention that has not gotten a lot of attention or media, like say the voting rights bill, is it's not as intriguing to media and stuff, but it looks like the restoration of Medicaid, allowing people to get signed up for Medicaid before they leave prison, is coming through this year. And I can't emphasize, as far as what is it, something I like to ask myself when we're passing these bills and working together and making changes in laws and policies, is how does this impact someone's experience when they're actually leaving prisons and jails? And so I like to ask myself that before spending a whole lot of time working on something. And if someone can get signed up for Medicaid prior to release, that's a huge advantage. And so I'm excited about that. Bill number's 5304, I believe, in case people want to check it out. Another huge victory for us this year, and I think for the whole state, especially people impacted by incarceration, is a tweak in the county of origin law. Under the current law, people need to be released to whatever county they were first arrested and convicted in. That's the general rule, and it's sometimes incredibly difficult to get that changed. So what happens is, in practice, someone could be from Tacoma. They get pulled over in Okanagan County. Please excuse my pronunciation if I have that wrong. Guess where they're going when they get released? The whole family's from Tacoma. They've got housing, they've got employment, and they're getting released to Okanagan County or wherever it happened to have been where they were first arrested and convicted. So it used to be that the Department of Corrections would have to demonstrate that it would be absolutely detrimental to their reentry to be released to county of origin. The change in law says that it now just only needs to be beneficial to change the county of origin. So again, that's something that's not going to make the headlines. It's vitally important to improving successful reentry. There's a whole bunch of bills that I could talk about. I just sent a summary to Francis, so hopefully Francis can send that to the group. One thing I'll mention also is that housing, reentry, finding safe and stable housing remains the primary barrier to successful reentry after incarceration. That stems from actual discrimination against people and then just frankly the lack of supply of safe and stable housing. I just wrote an article on that topic for the Seattle University Law School's Journal on Social Justice, and I'll share a link in the chat, but I think that that's really a vital issue that we need to continue addressing. And I think I'll actually stop there. Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, Chris. And now to Landlord and Tenant, Michelle.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me a chance to provide some updates. I don't have any lessons learned that I can provide, especially on top of everything that's already been shared. I was minimally involved in the actual legislative processes, but I can give some updates on some really exciting bills that have passed regarding landlord-tenant relations. I think one, obviously there's the big one that Jim emailed about this morning, 5160, right to counsel in eviction matters, which is going to be huge given the pandemic, the impact that the pandemic has had on the economy and on housing in general, plus getting folks out of the moratorium. One of the other really huge ones that will also be really helpful given the current state of housing in the state is 1236, which is statewide just cause. And so for folks who are familiar with the Seattle Just Cause Ordinance, basically it means that there are only going to be certain enumerated reasons why landlords can end a month-to-month tenancy. So folks can't be evicted for no reason with a 20-day notice. And this will just have huge impacts on housing stability and just equity in housing, people being able to stay housed and focus on the things that they need to do with their lives. Another bill related to housing that is, and so 1236 is, I think, gone to the governor for a signature at this point. Another one that still has not been voted out of the Senate yet is 1277, which provides an additional funding source for eviction prevention and housing stability. So that one is, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes really quickly. I am not certain what the delay on that is. But it's still sitting there and waiting. I'm not sure if Antonio or anybody else knows more about that, but it seems like it's an area where additional advocacy could still be used because it's really important to help fund the eviction prevention services that are absolutely necessary in light of the pandemic and just the ongoing housing crisis in the state. And I think that's all that I have, and if people want to supplement it, that would be great.
Thank you. Now to discussion, reactions and comments. Yes, Terry, yes, our in-house legislative czar.
You are too kind, Francis. First I'll throw out a bill that I admit I don't know a lot about, but I believe Chris does, which is 1090, which stopped the state from having private for-profit prisons. And I think that's I believe it was already signed by the governor. And that's an amazing step for Washington and for the communities involved in that. And then the one that I know much more about is 1320. And this goes, I think, to Antonio's comment about the things that you never thought could happen in one session. A complete rewrite of our protection order statutes. And this will create for community members, for self-represented litigants, the fact that there'll be no wrong door for them to walk into and no wrong form for them to try to figure out what to use, that this is a huge game changer. So 1320, congratulations to the advocates who pulled that off in this session.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm trying to check. Antonio, go ahead.
Just to quickly follow up on two of those things. So Michelle, 1277, according to Senator Billig, is still ready to be pulled, but I think it's going to be tied into the budget conversation. It's still ready to be debated, but it's going to be pulled into the budget conversation. So I've been seeing a lot of the advocacy around it. Totally agree it needs to pass. House Bill 1090, we're really proud to work on that bill. We represented La Resistencia, that has been really focused on the Northwest Detention Center. What that bill, what 1090 does is it just prevents the operation of for-profit detention in the state. The sole current facility that does so, all of those facilities that are currently in operation will continue in operation until the end of their contract. But yes, by 2025 or March 2026, depending on some research that we're doing, at maximum will be the end of the Northwest Detention Center in Tacoma. Of course, we're waiting for litigation from GEO. The Attorney General is ready to respond to a lawsuit from GEO. They expect they'll get one.
Right. Anyone else? Yes, Sal, go ahead.
Just a brief update on Senate Bill 5476, and just to give everybody a quick background. I've been working with a group called Treatment First Washington to decriminalize the use of personal drug use, completely get that decriminalized. That's been a roller coaster during this session. And it looked like it was a lost cause as of a couple of weeks ago with different striker amendments that Senator Dinkgra's bill. However, at least from my knowledge, last Wednesday, the new amendments looks like we may have a chance now in this state to truly get decriminalization of drug possession. And what's really helped out too, our Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, first one, and I know as the nation, has supported true decriminalization. We know we're coming down to the end of session. And again, maybe Antonio, because he's got his fingers on the pulse of everything. So if you have some updates, I'd love to hear them. But this is so exciting because talking about really making a dent in systemic racism, if this passes, this will be a good step.
The House bill that's going to get debated today or tomorrow, it moves from Currently, it's felony drug possession. It creates a sort of an interim moment where the drug possession statute would lead to a misdemeanor, but then moves into civil infractions. So yes, I mean, the House version is looking good. The Senate is still very much in the world of criminalizing drug possession, and seeing how these two poles get together in a deal by the 25th, boy, we're running out of time. Should be interesting.
Yeah, Judge Keenan?
And I was just going to ask if Antonio wouldn't mind commenting on House Bill 1412. I don't think you commented on it yet. So that was the omnibus LFO bill that I helped work on. I know I worked with Antonio and the Superior Court Judges Association, the Minority and Justice Commission, and Columbia Legal Services to try and help draft some of that bill, which would have codified recommendations from the Sentencing Reform Task Force. It would have represented some fairly meaningful LFO reform. Got out of the policy committee, got out of appropriations, just languished there on rules and never got to the floor. And I'm just wondering, Antonio, if you have any thoughts on what we can do next session to try and get some traction on that or another LFO bill.
So thank you, Judge Keenan, and thank you for all the work you did on 1412. And yes, it's also one of those bills that also got caught up in the Blake conversation, because all of a sudden there were LFO considerations for folks who were, who were improperly assessed LFOs for felony drug possession. We were able, let's see the budget tomorrow, but at least in the House budget, we were able to get a proviso to do a bit of a study. The reality is that the local governments are forced into this situation to testify against bills like 1412 because they receive revenues from the legal financial obligations. What we're trying to do is find ways to disentangle that relationship, because I don't think the counties have a policy opposition to reduce the burdens and the harms created by LFOs. So we've got this study that will come out, knock wood, it's still in the budget tomorrow, that will come out with an interim report in December that will help to motivate conversations for the LFO, for the actual LFO substantive policy bill to pass next year. So a little bit of study, a little bit of education, and go at it again.
Thank you. Any other comment? Murph, did you add something, Murph? Okay. Anyone else? Judge Bradley? Is it a bell that is going on again? Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. That's okay. Thank you. Anyone else? All right, Diana, did we cover everyone? Yes. Okay. Now we thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jim, Janet, Antonio, and Chris, and Michelle. We appreciate you all. Thank you. Now, liaison report. I will start with gender and justice because they have a very special event coming up. So, Sal?
There's been no Gender and Justice Commission meeting since our last meeting, but I still have an update. Just in case you haven't heard, because I reported on this last time about the 2021 Supreme Court Symposium putting on by the Gender and Justice Commission and the Minority and Justice Commission. And I know Cesar that I see is on the line here, want to know when it is. The date has been set now. It's June 2nd. Repeat that, June 2nd from 8:45 to 1 o'clock. Keynote address by Angela Davis. So this is going to be really a phenomenal program. So we have it, they have a date now, and that's my newest update. There has not been another meeting. Our last.
Thank you, Sal. That was the event that I wanted us to talk about. Anybody else? Liaison reports? Yes, Terry.
Thank you, Francis. Because I'm the ATJ liaison to the BJA's Court Recovery Task Force, there's two issues coming up, one in my little area of family law that I wanted to highlight, and then one which is a broader discussion. So in the family law area, the Court Rules Committee has approved posting for notice and comment that's going to start on May 1st and continue to the end of July 31st, a statewide rule for an informal family law or domestic relations trial. So right now, in family law, maybe 3 to 4% of cases go to trial and the rest settle. But I think there's a good argument to be made that self-represented litigants settle, but they don't know what rights they're giving away, and they're just frustrated with the court system. So this is an opportunity for judges to be more hands-on. It's a court rule for judges to be more hands-on with self-represented litigants to come up with a better outcome for them. And so again, being posted May 1st for notice and comment. More comments are better. Whether you agree or disagree, more comments, robust comment is great. So we're very excited about that. And then the Court Recovery Task Force is focused on digital signatures. And this is a family law issue, but this extends way beyond family law, is what documents, quote, after the pandemic, unquote, will we still require a wet signature, or what documents just need a digital signature to move forward? Orders, motions, what should the court do going forward when courthouses are open more customary times? But we now know that both self-represented litigants and represented parties have been using digital signatures. And is this something that we should make a permanent option? And so I will put my my email in the chat. I'm a little anxious about doing that, but I will put my email in the chat. If you have comments about digital signatures that you want me to take back to the Court Recovery Task Force, I'm happy to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Miria, any liaison report?
Sure, just following up with all these technology wonders. The Pro Bono Council and the Legal Counsel for Youth and Children are working on a great collaboration on a virtual law project. And also the Pro Bono Council is working on helping with the Washington Law Help website redo, which will hopefully be much easier for pro se clients. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Miria. SP, any liaison report?
No, I reported in last month's meeting, the committees, the liaison that I'm part of is the Minority and Justice Commission and the Board of Judicial Administration. The next meetings happen after this meeting. So I will report in our next board meeting.
Thank you. And I also want to report that our next Racial Justice Consortium meeting is going to be next Friday. And I hope to provide a report next month meeting on that. Judge Bradley, any report, any liaison report?
No, thank you, Francis. The Board of Governors did meet recently. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend any of the hearings, so I would just refer folks to the report that the bar put out about that meeting.
Thank you. Judge Keenan, any liaison report?
No reports.
Thank you. Michelle?
I do not have a report. I'm the liaison to the Pro Bono and Public Service Committee and the Practice of Law Board, and I have unfortunately been unable to make their recent meetings.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Did I cover everyone? I think I do. Diana, anybody else? Okay, thank you. All right, so we go to Will, Equal Justice Coalition update, and I understand that Will is also going to be making the funding report for Caitlin and for Melinda today. So Will, over to you. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I'm representing the EJC and LFW today. So on the Equal Justice Coalition and, in addition to all the extremely exciting news out of the legislature on the policy side this year, we're also anticipating very, very good news on the budget side, as Jim alluded to. If we don't get a very bad surprise over the weekend, we are expecting the request for continued COVID response to civil legal aid programs via OCLA to be fully funded at the $11 million level that we were advocating for this session. So thanks again to everyone who participated in our advocacy this session. And if that's confirmed over the weekend, then next week we will be asking the Alliance to get back in touch with their legislators just to say thank you for fully funding that request. The other EJC news, I don't want to step on Cesar's federal funding update, but this is the time of year that we would usually go to Washington, D.C. As part of the American Bar Association's Advocacy Day and talk to our congressional delegation. We've been doing that via virtual meetings this past week with some more meetings to come this next week in support of what do they say, robust funding for the Legal Services Corporation. And that's a little more complicated this year because LSC is seeking both an additional large appropriation in any forthcoming COVID relief package, including the infrastructure plan that's being debated in Congress, and then also a very large increase in their annual appropriation later this year. So can let Cesar fill in any more details about that, but just wanted to share that we had a really good conversation with Congressman Kilmer this week. And he made a remark that I thought was just interesting as far as our messaging goes for people to think about, which is that he supports the goal of including legal aid as infrastructure in LSC's request for the infrastructure plan. And he said, as we look to restore our structures throughout our society, that should include the justice system. And he plays a relatively powerful role on the House Appropriations Committee. So while the requests are rather large this year, larger than they usually are for the Legal Services Corporation, we're hopeful that there's momentum for at least some increase at the federal level, in addition to the hopefully very good news coming out of the state in the next couple of days. I think that's it for EJC stuff. I don't know, Francis, if I should go right to the LFW update or if you want to hear more from Cesar first.
Let's hear from Cesar since you have mentioned Cesar. Let's hear from Cesar and then you can come back. Cesar, take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Will. The focus, and I'm not sure if I missed it exactly, but the piece about the infrastructure request, the two comments I would make is, number one, it was expected that the Legal Services Corporation would receive some funding as part of the American Rescue Plan, as it did last year in the first CARES Act bill. And that didn't happen, and that's the need, the reason why the shift has moved over to sort of human infrastructure. And that money would theoretically be available this year, when if it had been passed with the rescue plan, would have been available now. But in any event, that's the 350 million request nationally that is being sought. And it was good to hear Representative Kilmer's comments on that. The thrust of the EJC, annual congressional visits and so on concerned the funding for next fiscal year, which the appropriations process is just starting in DC. And in fact, the Legal Services Corporation has not yet submitted its budget request, which, just to remind everyone, was a request for $1 billion, let's just around $1+ billion, which always sort of gets everyone's head spinning a little bit. But I'd like to remind people that it is actually a very consistent number with where funding for legal services should be in this day and age. The fact is that Congress has not regularly increased Legal Services Corporation funding to keep pace with both increasing costs of delivering services as well as increasing poverty across the country. So we actually should be in the $800 to $900 million funding range. But we were very happy in December of 2020 when we got up to 460 million. That was like the highest level ever appropriated by Congress, which just reflects stagnant funding for decades. So the good news is LSC is going in and asking for the $1 billion, and in part driven by COVID, as well as trying to do a catch up, if you will. We did get some less promising news recently. I don't know if you've all tracked this, but the Office of Management and Budget, the White House, basically submitted the skinny, what's called the skinny bill, the skinny budget proposal to Congress before a more detailed proposal. And the skinny proposal that was submitted, what it does is it basically proposes certain spending caps or spending ranges for different committees and different departments and agencies. And the less than good news is that the OMB proposal for the committees that appropriate for the Legal Services Corporation talk about a 16% increase cap to the of what they can spend, basically. So theoretically, the maximum could be, if Congress goes along with it, a 16% increase rather than the 115% increase that the Legal Services Corporation is about to submit its request for. I can say that there are probably some folks in the legal aid community, the LSC funded community around the country, that were really hoping for that $1 billion number to be backed up by the administration. Others of us were recognizing that it would be wonderful if we got anywhere near it, but not expecting that the White House would get on board with that request. That said, as we've heard today, you don't know what the legislature is going to do, and so I think that continuing to the effort to support the Legal Services Corporation request continues to be a project for the remainder of the year for advocates across the country. The only other comment I would make is that the National Legal Aid and Defender Association has been engaged in discussions with legal services directors across the country on the question of restrictions and lifting restrictions. The entity restriction, which bars the use of any money for certain purposes that are prohibited by for federal funds. That said, that entity restriction and a set of that comes with it are actually part of an appropriations rider that was put back in the mid-90s on LSC funding and renewed ever since. And NLADA recommended back in November to the Biden administration a slew of justice-related reforms, including removing the entity restriction on non-federal funds. To the Biden administration. There was a lot of debate and discussion about the politics and the viability of trying to do that, particularly in the climate in Congress right now, and certainly around the issue of undocumented representation and the Republican opposition to anything supportive of those efforts. But at this stage, and so it's a very difficult read, as NLADA reports. It's a very difficult read to know what the chances are in Congress as to pursuing such an amendment or such a revision of the rider. But NLADA has formally asked the Office of Management and Budget, when they do submit their detailed budget, to include language to remove that rider, and we'll stay tuned and see what happens whether they do accept the request, and if it is accepted, we'll see what Congress does with it as the appropriations process goes along for the remainder of the year. That's all I have. I don't know if there are any questions.
Thank you, Cesar. Any question or comment for Cesar on federal funding? All right, Will, you can come back with campaign.
All right, I can run through the LFW updates really quickly on the funding side. First is, as I'm sure many of your organizations know, Give Big in Washington started, goes through May 6th. If you want to help the campaign for equal justice raise money during Give Big, there's a profile on the Washington Gives website that you can donate, or you can make your own fundraising page and help promote the campaign, similar to how they did during Goldmark this year. The Associates campaign is getting rolling. There is a virtual happy hour next Thursday, the 26th, with Justice Yu as a speaker. And I think Murph and Ed Witter from KCBA are going to join that as well. So that should be a cool event, and that's open to everyone, not just associates. And you can find that on our Facebook page if you're interested in that. The LAFCO, Legal Aid Fundraising and Communications Roundtable, is having our next meeting on Thursday, right, Lindy? Yeah, Thursday at noon. And that's open to everybody as well in the Alliance. That should be a really good conversation about Give Big and also just fundraising events in general, how they've been going virtually during COVID. The corporate campaign for justice is also about to start, and Natalia and Melinda wanted me to ask if anyone has ties to corporate legal departments who might be interested in participating, to let them know. And lastly, the endowment and LFW's racial equity speaker series just wrapped up, a 6-part series. There was a discussion that included Jorge and Nick Allen from CLS earlier this week. And LFW is looking forward to offering future sessions later this year based on interest from participants. But if you want to catch up with any of those, they're all recorded and on the LFW website. If you weren't able to attend any of those sessions. And then the other thing I would just quickly note is that LFW is no longer involved in administering the Washington Immigrant Relief Fund. That LFW played a management role in getting that kicked off last year. The legislature or the state has approved new funding for that effort, and it's now going directly through DSHS at the state level, and then with the same community partners administering it, including Wizen and many others. And the application for that launched yesterday, and already more than 10,000 people have applied, which, although LFW is no longer directly involved in that, we're obviously still extremely supportive of that work and really amazed by the work that our community partners in that effort continue to do in running the program. So if you want to get the word out about that anymore, it seems like the word is already out quite a bit, and obviously the need is still enormous, but if you're looking for any more information on that, let us know. And I think that's it from the LFW side.
Thank you. Will, any comments or question for Will? All right. Okay. Any announcement and updates? Any announcement or updates? Any announcement or updates? Okay. This is our committee schedules. Delivery System Committee meets every Tuesday, every first Tuesday of the month between 3:30 p.m. and 5 p.m. The next meeting is on the 4th of May, May 4. Technology Committee meets third Tuesday of every other month between 12 and 1:30 p.m. Our new chair is Terry Price, and it was really good joining them at the meeting this month. It was marvelous. The next meeting is going to be on the 15th of June. The Rules Committee, chaired by George Keenan, meets third Tuesday of every other month at 12 p.m., between 12 to 1 p.m. The next meeting is on the 18th of May, May 18th. These meetings is available for anyone to join to be part of it. Thank you all for coming today. It's 11:20. I'm giving you 10 minutes FOC, free of charge. Enjoy and have a nice weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.